Okay, we're recording. Hello. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good today. How are you, Shannon?
I am doing well. I'm hanging on, I'm hanging on to dear life.
What are we talking about today?
I'm really excited for what we're talking about today. I forgot to wear a tinfoil hat, but I probably should have. So, for all our listeners, we're talking about UFOs and aliens, abductions. We're talking about weird shit in the sky.
We're talking about two specific cases today.
Yes, two specific cases.
Yes. One, each of these intrigues us, so we picked our own cases to talk to the other about.
Yeah, I don't know who you want to go first, but
I think you should go first.
Okay. I'm excited to hear what you have. That's what I'm excited about. So how do you want to do this? Do I just start telling you about it? Do you kind of just respond?
Yeah, so
okay.
I know that you were going to research about is it Andreasson affair?
Andreasson affair.
Andreasson affair. So I don't know anything about it, but I love aliens, so I want to hear about it and, just pique my interest.
All right, I will try to pique your interest. All right, so the Andreasson affair is actually it's a book. I think it might actually be a series of books written by Raymond Fowler. And so I'm not really talking about the book itself, but stuff that he talks about in the book pertaining to Betty Andreasson. And I do have other sources for this. One of them, which actually was the reason for my interest, was from the last podcast on the left. They actually covered this, and they didn't cover everything, but I found this really fascinating. And the reason we're talking about this one, because I am kind of the more skeptical of the two here, I would say, is that this one is one that is highly regarded as not proof necessarily, but it's a little bit more reasonable. It's extremely well researched, and I say reasonable, it's actually kind of a crazy shit show. It's insane. Like, everything I'm going to be talking about is just completely wild. So, like, you really have to be like, if you're getting on this ship, you're on this ship. Like, no questions
I'm on
asked.
it.
Okay.
I'm ready to sail.
All right, yeah, because there's going to be a lot of questions, and I think that we should, interrogate everything, because I think there's a lot of, like, I'm not saying this is aliens, but if it's not aliens, what is it? Like, that's something I'm going to come back to a lot.
Love how this is starting. So,
all right, yeah. So, tinfoil hats are on. We're ready. So, Betty Andreasson, she was this really, really religious Christian woman, and that's going to come back a lot. That she was very Christian. She was all about Jesus, all about God, and she had 7 children. 7.
Wow.
Yeah. 7 children. She had this husband who was apparently down for all those. And then her father was actually in town when this happened. And so I think, just setting the landscape here a little bit, this happened in Massachusetts in a town called South Ashburnham. Quite the mouthful. And this was in the 1960s. And I want to just say, like, immediately, like, this is one of the reasons I find this case so interesting, is that in the 1960s, or at least in the time that she had experienced her abduction, I guess we'll call it, or experience, there wasn't that much on TV or, like, in the news or in the papers about aliens at this point. Like, this was when it all started to happen, or at least people started to report these things as occurring, and so there wasn't really a set standard for, like, the typical alien that we would immediately think of. Like, Andre, what would you describe a gray alien as?
I've seen pictures of, allegedly gray aliens, so I would describe them as that. Like, well, actually, I don't know. Some of them are tall, some of them are short, but I think they are short, big heads, gray, black eyes, no nose, tiny mouth, no ears, long limbs.
Yeah, for sure. And that's basically how she described them. She was like, these are short, these are gray, they have big heads, like slits for mouths and stuff like that. And I think that she was one of the first ones to report this. And so it's possible to say, like, okay, this bitch is creative. Like, she's just creative. But it's interesting because it is one of the first ones to actually do that. And then people followed and they were like, yeah, like, it looked like this. So either they were just following, or maybe just perhaps they all saw the same thing. I don't know. But yeah, so 1960s Massachusetts, she's praising Jesus in her little house. She lived in the country. Well, not really like country. There were a couple houses nearby within acreage. So her house, and then you could probably see across the field, maybe there's the neighbors. And so this happened after her husband was in a car accident. And this is another thing that's kind of like interesting. When I'm talking about proof, I'm not talking about proof of aliens necessarily. I'm talking about proof of the fact that the concrete details of this event definitely happened. And I think that's really interesting. So the concrete evidence of this is that the stuff around the aliens definitely happened. So one of those things is that Betty and her family reported that the power went out. It was really foggy and there was light snow, and all of this is corroborated. Like there was definitely like those weather patterns occurring in her area that night. There was definitely a power outage. And so we know that happened. We know that there was a car crash, and that's why her husband wasn't there and her father was staying with them to help with the kids. And so that's where it gets interesting is Betty, her father, and all 7 children all say that this happened. They all remember it happening, and they all have accounts of it happening. So we have those details established that they remembered. Okay, so let's get into the real weird stuff.
Ugh, I'm creeped out.
The really weird stuff. So the power goes out. At this point, they're preparing for the night, lighting candles, whatever. They're all inside the house in the same general area, and then suddenly a pink or reddish light floods their home. And this is on a foggy night, and it's slightly snowy out. It's really dark, and so like, where is this light coming from? Like that's like, I don't know. And they all say that it occurred like, and this is in the 60s. I'm not sure what could have caused that.
LSD.
So yeah, maybe all the kids were doing LSD. I don't know. And so immediately they all go to the window, and they look out the window and they see, you got it, a spaceship. I mean, we're just going to say spaceship. We don't know for a fact that it was from space. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the Russians. We don't know.
Oh my God.
But there's a ship out in their backyard. Maybe it's their front yard. I can't remember that small detail. But it's in the yard. And out pops 4 creatures. And these are the gray aliens that we talked about. They're about 4 feet tall. And here's the other weird thing. This isn't actually something that a lot of alien abductees share, is the matter of clothing. But for Betty, she said that they were wearing clothes. They were wearing these like silver jumpsuits. And
oh my God. Oh, this is so creepy, because the case that I'm going to talk about, I can already see a lot of similarities here.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm so excited. So they're wearing these silver jumpsuits. They're about 4 feet tall. One of them is 5 feet tall. He's probably the leader. And they start to like hop towards the house. And what happens is that they're coming from the ship, right? And they're all just watching. And they see them hop through the door. Like, not like opening the door. They just like, they immaterialize through the door and into the room of the house. And Betty's just like, this is kind of weird. This is strange. And she's like a good Christian woman, just like chilling about. And so the next thing is very strange. This isn't
strange so far.
I mean, this is all pretty strange. But I mean, when we're talking about alien encounters, like, I'm not sure I've heard of this happening, but what happened is that her entire family froze in suspended animation. Like, not Betty though. Betty was just chilling. And yeah, so here she is surrounded by aliens, and this Christian woman, this strong Christian woman, she thinks that they're angels. She just immediately assumes, oh God, like, this is God.
My mom, if she's aliens.
Yeah, basically. And so she's basically just like, oh, I need to please these angels. Like, obviously, like, they're here for God for whatever reason. And so first, going back to their outfits, for some reason they had an insignia of a bird on their uniforms, which that'll come back later. And so, like, they start to talk to her. They do it psychically, though, because, I think that's something else that occurs in ufology, is that the Greys communicate psychically.
Yes.
Yeah, because they have the little small mouths. They don't need to use them for that, apparently.
Well, a lot of people think that aliens are just like what we're gonna become, like their future us.
Oh yeah,
like
no.
they're an advanced version of us. They just live in a different planet, like, but we all came from the same kind of thing. I don't know. it's hard to explain, but the basic idea is that like that's basically where we're heading, and by that logic, like they had mouths just like us, but they became so advanced and so intelligent that they started to have no use for them because they were able to communicate telepathically. And it is like it is a thing in evolution that when a part of the body becomes useless, that it either shrinks or like babies stop being born with them, like some kids that are born without appendixes, like that's a thing. Or like some people that are born without tailbones, because those are just I was gonna say something, but they're basically, they were useful in the past but no longer, so we're like our bodies are starting to like weed them out. And this could be that, but taken to the extreme. Like eventually we'll have no mouths and we'll have no need to be so tall, I guess, and our skin will be gray. And I mean, I know that hair is an interesting one to debate in favor of, because like that makes sense. Like hair is waste and it requires water, and maybe like eco-conscious future humanity will be like, nope, no more hair. And then
snatch that wig.
People, yeah, exactly. And so people either, I don't know, shave it all, or just all of a sudden stop being born without hair. I doubt that's how evolution works, but you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's all really fascinating, and I love that theory, because that's kind of something I want to talk about later. Is, you know, like, what if these aliens are us just from another dimension?
Ugh, okay, keep going.
So she starts talking to them, and they tell her essentially that they want knowledge. And so this bitch Betty gives them her daughter's Bible, and like she literally gives it to them, and it's never seen again.
Oh my god, can you imagine? They read it all and they become Christians. And
so they accept it, and they give her a blue book in return, but it's filled with all these symbols and weird things, and so she can't really decipher it. But she actually has that book for 3 weeks after this event, and then it disappears. And her Bible's also never seen again. So that's an interesting detail. So another thing that I find extremely interesting, and this is corroborated later in her life, is that Betty's daughter Becky, who was 11 at the time, she wakes up. So Betty Andreasson is talking to the aliens, and she's like, are my family okay? Like they're frozen. And the aliens unfreeze Becky before her eyes, and Becky sees them and she freaks out. And she's like, what's happening? And this is an 11-year-old girl. And then later on she ends up bringing that up in, I think, a therapy or hypnosis session. She remembers it. So that's really interesting. And then they actually end up waking Betty's father up too. I'm not sure when that happens, but it definitely occurs. And then they put him back under. So she knows that they're fine. She's a woman of God. She has faith that this is somehow going to work out, and this is somehow proof of God. And I mean, if you gotta cope with an alien experience, you know, you cope with it.
There are worse ways.
Yeah, there are worse ways. And so Betty goes with them. Like, they actually invite her. They take her through the door.
Betty, come and chill.
Yeah, Betty, come and chill. Like, let's talk more about your friend Jesus. Like, I don't know. Like,
have you ever seen the LMAO aliens?
No, I haven't. What is that?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Never mind. I'll show you later. But keep going.
Okay, so she goes with them onto the ship, and they take her. I don't know if the ship is in motion at this point or what, but she's on the ship now, and she sits down, or no, she lays down on a table. And okay, it's kind of weird, but they like float her up onto the table telepathically. I don't know about that. That's scary, but that's what she said happened. And they stick a needle up her nose.
When he invites you to chill, but you end up with a needle probe.
Yeah, needle probe up the nose. This is also weird because she experienced all these physical sensations, right? And in her hypnotherapy later on in life, she ends up recounting them from herself experiencing them. So she'll recount the pain of it happening, and also she can recount it as if she's just watching it occur, but each time it's always accurate. And so they probed her nose, and then they put a needle in her belly button.
Oh my God, that is the same thing that happens in my case. In my case, they also stick a needle in this person's navel, which is basically like their belly button, and apparently that's extremely painful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure sounds terrible. So the aliens were talking to her, and they indicated that they knew that there was something missing from her body. And
Ooh.
a couple years prior, Betty had had a hysterectomy. Her uterus was removed. I mean, she already had 7 kids, so
Yeah.
yeah, so somehow the aliens knew that, which I think is kind of interesting. And then one of the last things that happened, I'm just kind of giving a summary of this because there's a lot more to this, but the last thing that happened
No.
is she got into this type of chair apparatus on the ship, and then she was covered in this like type of goo, and then they actually traveled somewhere, and it's kind of theorized that maybe the goo was to protect her during this travel. You know, maybe her like human body was too fragile and she needed something to like, yeah. And so when they landed or, you know, appeared wherever they were, it was on like an entirely different world. And this is not something that happens frequently in UFO abductions. You know, they probe, they mess with your reproductive organs or whatever, and then they drop you off. But Betty, she was down for the ride. She didn't complain about anything. She was worshiping these people. So they were
oh my god.
They're like, come on over, like, right? Like and so she went to their world, whatever you would call it, and there was all this stuff that wasn't immediately recognizable. It was, you know, alien. And she's like going over everything, and then she ends up going and meeting, I guess, what you would call their leader. And she...
Oh my god, can you imagine if the aliens came and met our leader?
Oh, yeah, they would leave immediately, or they would just destroy us. That would be the end for humanity.
Oh my god, plot for Independence Day 3?
Oh god, that would be a small movie. It would end after 10 minutes. Okay, so...
Anyway, keep going.
She sees this giant bird that shoots fire out of its mouth. And the bird dies, and then from its ashes, there's a worm. And so this is Phoenix.
So like a phoenix?
Yeah, it's like the Phoenix imagery. And she's talking to like the lead alien or whatever. And basically, the conclusion she comes to is that either the Phoenix or this alien is God. And that's her interpretation, you know, whatever. She's like totally like enchanted with these creatures. And they're like, you know what, Betty, we like you. Like, more or less, that's kind of what happens. They're like, you're cool, Betty.
This is so interesting. Like, I've never heard of an abductee reacting
I know.
like this. Like, not with fear, but rather with the curiosity.
Right.
And they're almost like relaxed about it from what it sounds like.
She was like so down. Like, she was down for this, and I think that's probably the reason they were so amiable too.
Yeah, probably.
And so they ended up taking her back. The leader was like, you're not going to remember all of this, but you're going to have our book for 3 weeks, so feel free to look at that. And yeah, that's kind of where it ends. I mean, not entirely. I think that she does end up having another experience later on in life, but whatever, that's not really important. But
interesting. Okay, so they wipe her memory, but they're still like, we're gonna give you the book, or did they not wipe it and give her the book, but after 3 weeks they just made the book disappear?
They wiped her memory, I guess, but she tried to read the book, but she couldn't make anything out of it, you know, because it was just alien symbols, so it didn't really matter anyway, and then it did disappear. So that's what happened with that. And then the other thing is that she ended up taking a lie detector for all of this, and she passed. So at the very least, like, she wasn't lying about the experience. That doesn't mean the experience happened.
If she's crazy, at the very least, she really is, and she believes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she believes it happened. Yeah. And her father never wanted to talk about it, really. He didn't. Like, he was, like, relatively either traumatized or he knew more than he was saying. But he didn't want to be reminded of the whole experience, and everyone else seemed to remember after a while. And
that's so interesting. Yeah. The man in my story, like the husband in my story, is also very like trying to just like shove it under the carpet.
Ooh, I think I might have an idea of what you're going to talk about, but I might be wrong. Okay, so and then what was I going to talk about? Oh, so and all of this is uncovered in hypnotherapy later, and so that's the other theory I wanted to talk about is what it could be. And so from this website, it's called neardeath.com. sounds so legit.
Okay.
We have some of the transcriptions from the hypnotherapy sessions. There's actually like 400 pages online of this if you want to sort through it and read it.
God.
Yeah.
Of this case?
On this case, yeah, just from her hypnotherapy sessions, you can hear what she says.
Yeah, these are extensive sessions. Okay, are you gonna like read me an excerpt?
I really want to, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so, and this is from neardeath.com, so that's another theory, is that this was a near-death experience, and maybe her dad, you know, maybe he witnessed something else that wasn't aliens, maybe someone broke in and tried to kill her or something, you know, like, there's I
guess.
I mean, and obviously the coping mechanisms, I think maybe through the hypnotherapy, she started to draw on her comfortableness with religion to insert those things into the story, you know, to make it more palatable. So the bird may have not actually been real, it was just her mind, stuff like that. And so this is from one of the transcriptions where she's talking about seeing the one who would be like God. Okay, and then I'll kind of say when who's talking. And I'm just going to start from a random place.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so at this very moment, and this is the narrator, or the transcription summary, whatever, an indescribable smile came over Betty's face. The only adjective that the investigators could think of to describe it is rapturous. This expression of pure, unrestricted happiness remained on Betty's face as the hypnotist continued to question her. The hypnotist says, "You seem happy. Why are you so happy?" Betty says, "It's just, I can't tell you about it." "Alright, I know you can't tell me, but I want you to do a few things. I want you to ask yourself why you were being shown that which you were being shown. In other words, you weren't given this trip just for a free ride, so to speak. They want you to see what you were seeing. Does that make sense?" "Yes." "Alright, now that you're there, ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? Why am I here? What am I supposed to think about after I leave here?" And she says, "Oh, it matters not what I get from it." "What do you mean?" "It's words cannot explain it. It's wonderful. It's for everybody. I just can't tell you this." "You can't? Okay, why can't you?" "For one thing, it's too overwhelming and it is indescribable. I just can't tell you. Besides, it's just impossible for me to tell you." "Alright, are you capable, when looking around you, to tell yourself?" "I see it." "Right, that which you can see, you have a grasp of even if you don't understand it." "I understand it. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. I wish I could share it with you."
Okay, well, how like productive were these sessions? I mean, they must have taken some time for them to like juice the info out of her, because she was being very cryptic.
Yeah, okay. So Betty began speaking in a strange tongue. And then she begins to cry. And she says, "Father loves the world so very much." And she says, "So many reject him." And yeah, so I think what I'm getting from this is like, either she experienced something that's so alien that you literally can't describe it, or no, like I just get like this weird like cult mentality from this that's like kind of not even like Christian anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that she's so religious, because you mentioned that, and also the fact that, you know, what if this was a near-death experience, that would totally explain why maybe she had just a huge hallucination, and why this is imbued with like religious imagery, or just like the phoenix thing is so, I feel like human mythology. I really don't see these aliens in their world having a phoenix, and also the fact that during the hypnosis sessions, she said what you mentioned, which was like, oh, like so many reject the father. Like clearly she was weaving this with her own beliefs, which makes me doubt the account.
Yeah, and I think that it's weird because like if it was aliens and she's like worshiping it as a god, like that's just extra creepy. Like that's weird. Like I don't know. That just made me really uncomfortable, that whole like excerpt, because I'm like, she like genuinely, like she's like crying, like she believes this to be like real, like whatever it is, and she takes it with blind faith.
In the end, you as a reader, what's the verdict?
I don't know. I think that I'm more likely to believe that it's aliens and that maybe she misinterpreted the entire thing through this lens.
Mm-hmm.
Because she definitely wasn't lying. I mean, lie detectors, they aren't 100% reliable, that's just a fact. But she believed that something happened,
Mm-hmm.
and there were people who witnessed it. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't think that maybe we have all the facts, and I think that if it was aliens, it was definitely like some sort of interdimensional travel, because like it's not really possible for people to travel from like another planet through space at this point. Like it's just too hard. It would take way too long.
Yeah. I I agree. I think that that was probably it. I think that it was real. That a lot of these things did happen to this woman, but she just added some things here and there to make herself understand it, maybe even at a subconscious level, because she was so, I don't know, so just
Yeah.
in awe of all this alienness. I guess you could say that her brain had to find some way to interpret it and make sense of it. So clearly she imbued that with religious meaning, which, you know, hard to blame her. She's fucking abducted by aliens, take it to a faraway planet.
Yeah.
Like, where would your brain go? But from what you said, like for example, that the daughter saw this too. That tells me something. You know, that adds some veracity to it, I think.
Yeah, and I think that if this wasn't anything, if it was just completely bound to this world of like maybe someone broke in or something else happened, I think the father would know. I think that the reason he didn't want to talk about it could be more indicative of something else happening, because we know that the weather was messed up, we know that the car crash occurred, we know the power was out. So all that real stuff is like that happened. So maybe she was just using aliens to protect herself from something real, and we might never know what that is. But I mean, also aliens, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, the whole like, did the husband ever say anything?
He wasn't there. He was in the hospital.
Wait, didn't you say someone was on froze besides the daughter?
Yeah, that was Betty's father. So her Betty's father was
Oh,
there
okay.
because her husband was in the hospital.
Oh, okay. Did Betty's father say anything?
Uh, he said that he did remember it, but that I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, he said he remembered it. He just didn't want to talk about it. So he
Okay,
was a lot
well,
more secretive
that's
about it.
at least two people besides Betty. So,
Yeah, if you
you
believe
know.
it to be true.
But what I'm saying is, I do believe it to be true, at least to an extent, and the reason why is because these two other people claim to have seen it too.
Yeah.
So that's why. I Wow, that one's pretty outlandish, though. I
Yeah.
understand why. Well, one, why she was rejected at first from that UFO stories group, and two, why you said it was gonna be crazy. Because yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. And I feel like that honestly lends credence to why I'm more likely to believe this one is because it's so crazy. Like I feel like the more crazy the better when we talk about these sorts of things, because the reality is that we don't know what it would be like to encounter something out of this world. It would literally be out of this world, you
I
know?
mean,
Like, so if someone was. Oh, I forgot the
what?
best part. How did I forget this? I mean, this isn't like the best part, but she was able to draw like an outline of like what the ship looked like in
Oh,
terms of the rooms and stuff and how everything was set up. And an engineer said that like it was pretty rational and that it was pretty likely to actually have functioned as a ship if that's what it was.
huh.
So I think that was kind of lit.
Was her husband an engineer? Was her father an engineer? Maybe she got that from somewhere.
Maybe, I don't
Interesting.
know.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying about the crazier the better, or the crazier the more believable. Because it's like, if you're gonna say that aliens abducted you, um, I feel like if it was fake, you just go by the regular story, like kind of the stock story, which is, oh, you know, they, I don't know, put something in my butt, and then like, I don't know, and then they left me back home, and I can't remember anything, and I'm losing like 3 hours of, you know, time. But this is a whole other level. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. If it was all a lie, it just surprises me that she didn't try to make it more believable. She clearly wasn't shy about making out the most outlandish things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does lend some credence. I understand what you're saying.
All right, so that was Betty Andreasson story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm shook. I'm a little spooked here.
All right. That's what we aim for.
And I think that's also the perfect place to start my story with
Oh,
this
I'm so excited. Tell me all about it.
with this spookness that I'm feeling. It's very fitting. Also, like I said, a couple of parallels between your story and mine, which I find really interesting. First parallel.
Okay, I'm taking notes. We're gonna solve this alien thing tonight.
Yes, first parallel. This one also happened in the 60s.
Okay.
Second parallel is this. Oh my god, I totally thought about it, but now I forgot. Oh yeah, that in this case the husband, but in general a male figure. Like the male figure, in contrast to the woman who experienced it. Well, they both experienced it, but the male figure was very in denial about this for a long time. So that's just a couple. You might see a couple more parallels as I go along. But anyway, this is the case of Barney and Betty Hill.
Oh yes, yes, I totally know this one. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. I picked it because it's the biggest case, but not just that. I picked it because it is so big, as a matter of fact, that it kind of catapulted aliens and UFOs into the American zeitgeist. Like it became, I don't know, I don't want to say acceptable, but it's just a more mainstream idea, because I'm sure that people, believed, or some people believed at least, or talked about saucers and unidentified flying objects and like little men in the sky before this, but this really brought it to the forefront when it happened and in the years to come. And by, like the early mid 70s, things like tinfoil hats, like people were actually wearing, like, I don't know, I feel like aliens just as a concept became much more mainstream, and this was a big part of that. Like, matter of fact, the article that I read, I think even says that once this case did become publicized, the book that talked about it, the book that was written on it, was like super duper successful and very novel, and I'm sure it was. So anyway, Barney and Betty Hill. Barney and Betty Hill, they allegedly had a close encounter of the fourth kind in 1961 in the state of New Hampshire while driving on a rural portion of a road, basically. Now, Barney and Betty Hill were an interracial couple. Betty was white and Barney was black, and this is going to come into play later. The reason this comes into play is because some of the dissenters, some of the people who refute the couple's claims use, I think one psychologist actually in one like journal or something refuted it by saying, "Oh, I think that it was all just caused by the stress of being an interracial couple in 1960s America. Like it was all hallucinations, and, like marital issues," which I thought was super shitty and lame. Like, because the things that they experience are so detailed that it's just like, that's such a cop out. But anyway, okay, so these two were driving in New Hampshire. It was night. It was around 10:30 p.m. on September 19th of 1961. They were driving back to Portsmouth, which I believe is where they lived, from a vacation that they had in Niagara Falls and Montreal. So they were just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, again, driving home at night, when Betty claimed to see a quote-unquote bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon and the planet Jupiter upward to the west of the moon. So she's seeing some weird little thing moving frantically, like very rapidly, close to the moon and close to the planet Jupiter from what you can see. So already this is super strange. The thing keeps moving erratically, and Betty asks her husband Barney to stop the car so they can look closer and so they can walk their dog. They had their dog with them. I wonder, like, if the dog could talk. I wonder what he saw. But I wonder, if he could talk, like, would the aliens remember to wipe the dog's mind as well? But they stop the car, and they stop the car close to this scenic picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. These are all just markers for that one person listening to us in New Hampshire, so they know where we're talking, where we're talking about.
We're looking out for you.
Yes. So they stop the car. They get out there. I don't know. They're breathing some air and walking the dog, and the thing keeps moving erratically, and they get scared because Betty takes out binoculars and she sees this quote unquote odd shaped craft flashing multicolored lights travel across the face of the moon. So at this point, they're freaking out. They're like, what's going on? This is not just some whatever. And she has her binoculars on. She can see that it's something more than just, I don't know. I don't even know what you'd think it was at the beginning.
You said it was multicolored lights? That's
yes.
interesting. Okay, go on.
Yes. So Betty thought it was a flying saucer, so she was onto it from the get-go. I'm glad. She's smart.
Yes,
anyway,
Queen.
they freak out. Barney sees it through the binoculars too, and him thinking it was a plane, he sees it and he says, quote unquote, this object that was a plane was not a plane. This is a quote that they later took from one of the hypnosis sessions. So he freaked out too. They decided to get back in the car, and this thing comes down from where it is, like way up in the sky, to being 40 feet. So this big ass thing is in the sky. It comes down, it hovers above their car, and Betty's able to describe that this thing is about 40 feet long and that it, quote unquote, seems to be rotating. At one point, the huge ass silent craft is 100 feet above the Hill's car. So fairly close and, kind of big, and they're scared. And Barney said it reminded him of a huge pancake, which that was interesting. So this guy is carrying his pistol in his pocket. He's ready to pull it out because he's scared. He uses the binoculars again to look up, and he claims to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look at him. This is according to the Wikipedia article, which is just creepy. When I read that, I got creeped out. And he says that, quote unquote, these beings were somehow not human. No shit, Barney.
Oh, God. This is terrifying.
Again, middle of the night, their cars stop. They see this thing. All of a sudden, it's 100 feet above them, and it turns out to be a huge fucking spacecraft with multicolored lights, and there's little humanoids in there. The couple's freaking out. I don't know why they haven't left then.
I mean, if that appears over me, I'm frozen. I am pissing myself. They can take me. I'm their pet. Like, I don't care anymore.
I mean, okay, never mind. Barney says, quote unquote, they're going to capture us, and then they fucking book it.
Oh shit.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, they start driving, and almost immediately, they start driving, right? They're fucking scared. Betty rolls down her window, looks up, and then, according to the article, almost immediately the Hills heard, their last name is Hills, because I didn't make that clear, maybe I didn't, but Betty and Barney Hill, the Hills heard a rhythmic series of beeping or buzzing sounds, which they said seemed to bounce off the trunk of their vehicle. The car vibrated, and a tingling sensation passed through the Hills' bodies. This is according to the Wikipedia article again. They apparently got high from this. Like, all of a sudden they were in a higher state of consciousness or something like that. At least that's what the article explains. I'm not sure exactly what they mean, but clearly the couple was freaked out by these buzzing sounds, and all of a sudden they must have had like an out-of-body experience. And then all of a sudden a second series of beeping sounds returns them to, quote unquote, full consciousness, and that's it. The experience is over. They find themselves 35 miles south of where they began, but they have no recollection of how the fuck they got there.
That's insane.
I pissed myself in my little pants.
They lost time, or okay.
Yeah, they lost 35 miles worth of time, which is, I don't know how long, but probably a little under an hour. Or rather, I think it mentions here exactly how long it was. But even if it was under an hour, and if it was no more, that's still a long time to not remember. That's still a big track of road to not remember. 35 miles. So, what happens?
Oh my god.
They go home as if nothing happened. I mean, clearly they're both freaked out. Betty especially, because I feel like Barney is in this kind of state of denial, but Betty isn't. So she clearly isn't. She's not hiding anything. She's freaking out. But what are you gonna do at that point? Like, just stay in the car forever or in the middle of the road? No, you go home. So they do. They go home, and then they quote unquote start experiencing some odd sensations and impulses that they could not readily explain. One of them was their watches stopped running and they never ran again. Another one was that Barney felt compelled to examine his genitals, but he didn't find anything. The article also mentions that the wife Betty had this weird like necessity to have her luggage be kept near the back door of the house rather than in the main part where it was usually kept. Like just these
Insane
weird
girl.
limitations that they couldn't control. I mean, yeah, so because you gotta run. So that happened, and then they're perplexed and they don't know what to do. So Betty goes in her room. Eventually, she looks at the dress that she was wearing that night, and she can see that the dress is torn at the hem, at the zipper, and at the lining. And she's like, "What the fuck?" And she also notices that there's a pinkish powder on her dress. So, I mean, you can't be more freaked out at that point. I think she just kind of accepts this is what happened. Gosh. She's like, "Yep, was fucking abducted by aliens, and this is my dress, and this pink cosmic dress on, like pink cosmic dust on it." I don't know. I find it kind of humorous almost because it's like this crazy thing happens, and then you have to go home and still shower and still go to the bathroom and still, like just like usual, like normal, and that's so crazy to me. But they do, so that's what she sees on her dress. And the article did mention that over the years, various laboratories have conducted chemical analysis on the dress, but it doesn't mention what they found. I guess I should have looked that up, but I doubt they found anything significant. Otherwise, we probably would have known about it. Like if scientists all of a sudden came out and were like, aliens are real, this dust proves it. Like, anyway, so the next day they go up to the car, they start experimenting with a compass. Somehow they figure out to experiment with it. I don't know, they just think of it, and they can tell that when they move it closer to the spots where, so the car, I didn't mention this, so the car was left with these weird circular markings on it, like on the body of the car. Think of a crop circle but on a car.
Oh my goodness.
Which lends credence to crop circles, in my opinion. Honestly, a lot of people don't believe in crop circles. What the fuck is wrong with you? A lot of compelling evidence for that, but that's for another day. So there's these circular markings on the body of their car. They approach them the next day, and they can tell that when they have a compass and they approach these markings on the car with the compass, the needle goes crazy.
Okay.
And they're like, what the fuck? Okay. So they eventually report this to the U.S. Air Force. Betty does, but she withholds some of the details out of fear of sounding crazy. And so a report is filed, and eventually someone from the U.S. Air Force comes out, and their conclusion is they determined that the Hills, quote unquote, according to the article, probably misidentified the planet Jupiter. Which I'm like, okay, and what if they did? Like, does that discount everything else that happened? Because you know how I said that Betty thought that she was seeing this like little bright thing move erratically between like the moon and Jupiter? Well, maybe there's more info in the report that I didn't look up, but all this article says is that according to the report that the Air Force, like the conclusion they came to was that they had misidentified the planet Jupiter. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but like, what do you have to say about everything else? Do you think they hallucinated? I don't know. This wasn't very comprehensive, but okay, so days later, Betty borrows a UFO book, which I think is so cute. She borrows it from the library, right? Because there was no internet back then. Like, you couldn't talk to this about your neighbor because they weren't going to strike you as crazy. I mean, people still do, which is why we're doing this podcast in the safety of our homes. Being crazy together feels so good. But she borrows this book from the library, and she starts reading it, and she sees that it was written by this Marine Corps major, Donald E. Kehoe. And he was also the head of a civilian UFO research group. It was called NICAP, which I guess there was a chapter of it in the area. So eventually Betty attends she writes to the author of this book, and the letter eventually gets passed on to a Boston astronomer who is also a member of this UFO research group that the author of the book that Betty read is part of. So this, Betty reads a book, she writes a letter to the author being like, please help, I experienced what you wrote about or whatever. And the author, has a connection in the same group, an astronomer, so someone, reputable. And she sends this letter over to him that Betty wrote the author. They start looking into this thing. And 1961, they get interviewed by the astronomer, I believe, in this 6-hour interview, so a long interview, and they try to tell him everything they remember about the incident. And Barney does say that he didn't wish to remember, quote unquote. He did not wish to remember, which, understandable. Now, let me make sure it was the astronomer. Yes. So the astronomer listens to this after he interviews them for 6 hours. He listens to their testimonials, and he concludes that they were telling the truth, and that the incident probably didn't happen exactly as they recounted it, because I don't know, it's been a couple of days, or they are forgetting some things or something, but for the most part it's true. He believes them. So that's, already they have someone like an astronomer who believes them, and that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's good. That's something.
Yes. Now, Betty's dreams are a big thing in this case. So before they even have hypnotic sessions, Betty Hill, the wife, she 10 days actually, like 5 to 10 days after the incident, she starts having these vivid dreams. And to me, they're basically recollections of what happened, and they might be slightly off, because again, they're dreams, but clearly this was her brain interpreting what happened by pretty much like projecting it onto her eyelids.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty crazy, because eventually she says a lot of this very similar stuff in the hypnosis sections, and the husband, who is not interviewed with her during the sessions, also says the same stuff, very similar stuff to this, which to me lends a lot of credence to this case. Long story short, she details the dream. She says that at one point, when they were driving, her and Barney encountered a roadblock, and that men surrounded their car. That's all she can remember from those 35 miles that are really foggy in her mind. That's all she can remember. And
men as an actual real men, or
well, that's all she says about men. But so she says that in her dream she saw men. But again, the hypnosis sections, which are later, she describes these men, and I'm sure it's the same men. So anyway, in the dream, she can see her and Barney in the car. They find a roadblock. Some men surround her car. They make them walk in the forest. They're like walking behind them. She tries to talk to her husband, but he's sleepwalking. They're just walking through the dark woods. She describes the men as being like 5 feet to 5 feet 4 inches tall and wore matching blue uniforms. I don't know. I was shook when you mentioned the gray jumpsuits, because I was like, what if this was the same thing and she just maybe, I don't know, was colorblind? Maybe she thought that they were blue instead of gray. I don't know. This sounds very similar to me.
Maybe they're like from 2 different countries of the same planet.
Honestly. She also, in her dream, she apparently sees these men walked her and Barney into this disc-shaped craft of metallic appearance, quote unquote, and she can tell that they're being separated, and then she sees the leader and protests, but the leader tells them that if they were to be examined together, that it would take much longer, so they have to be separated. She says that eventually they put her on her table, they cut off a lock of her hair, they cut some of her fingernails, they scrape some of her skin onto what resembled cellophane, which I thought was interesting, and then they stick a needle into her belly button, which causes her agonizing pain, but then the leader like waves her hand across her face and the pain is gone. Like, Jesus.
Oh my god. Okay, I have to interrupt, because the exact same thing happened with Betty. I forgot to mention it. The aliens like touched her and they got rid of the pain.
Yeah, this is some okay. When did your case happen? What year was it?
Let me look up the exact date, but it was definitely the 60s. I think it was after Betty and Barney Hill. Betty Andreasson.
Yeah.
1967. So this is 6 years after.
Okay, so clearly she could have been influenced, but
that's
true. If we, I mean, I'm just gonna leave it at that, because she could have been influenced. Okay.
I mean, I wonder, do you think, how long did it take for Betty and Barney Hill to like either publish or discuss this in public?
The book didn't come out until I believe it was 1965. So, but there were a couple of reports and big articles about it before that. So you never know. But anyway, so that's what happens in her dream. Eventually, the examination finishes, and she says that she picks up a book with a bunch of strange symbols, and she can see a bunch of strange symbols, but she doesn't know what they mean. Then she asks the leaders where they came from, and the leader like projects this hologram that is a bunch of, it's like a constellation, basically a map of stars, and the leader is like, there you go, that's your info, have fun. But then he actually takes the book back and he tells Betty, oh, you can't have it because there's some disagreement about whether we should let you remember us. So actually you can't keep the book. And I'm guessing if the dream is accurate, that's when the aliens decided, never mind, we're wiping this bitch's mind. I don't know.
She should have believed that they were angels. I don't know.
That's so interesting. Like, it sounds like there was some internal conflict between like the crew of this alien spaceship about whether or not they should let the subject of the examinations remember the examinations.
Yeah.
Interesting. You think that it was just protocol for aliens to not let you remember anything, but I guess it's not. Depends on who you're talking to.
They're like, you know what? I don't like the look of that one. She looks
exactly. She's gonna rat us out. That happens. Barney calls these dreams nonsense at what point, which is really sad. And then later on, the hypnosis sessions happened, and these get really interesting. At this point, Barney is no longer in denial. Like, once he really gets into the hypnosis, he's way less in denial. He really opens up. He has, according to the article, very emotional sessions. It's just, I don't know, very, very turbulent, very emotional. He really puts it out there. And apparently it helped. I mean, it helped both of them because they weren't further traumatized by this because they were able to talk to someone about it. So in the end, whether you believe hypnosis is accurate or not, at the very least, it helped this couple not feel so anxious anymore. That's something the article does touch on, which I think is nice. But anyway, in the sessions, Barney, obviously he's hypnotized, and then just, to cut it short, he mentions how he, quote unquote, felt once they had come back into and they were conscious again, or actually, no, I'm getting this wrong. So yes, so the lost time happens, the missing time happens, and then he says during the hypnosis sessions he's able to recall the missing time. He says that during the missing time he felt an intense compulsion to pull off the road and drive into the woods.
What?
That is how they end up in the woods. Then they get out of the car, these little men walk them towards the spacecraft, and that's how they end up getting in.
Oh my.
So it was actually like a command, like a telepathic command or something that the aliens sent to this guy to drive into the woods, I guess, so no one could see them. So they go into the woods. Then the three men approach the car. According to him, it was three men, and then they get into the spacecraft. He does mention this thing about he talks a lot about eyes in his hypnosis sessions, Barney, and one of the things he says is, quote unquote, I feel like the eyes had pushed into my eyes. When he looked at the alien's eyes, he always felt this like pressing sensation into his eyes. It was like a very hypnotic feeling.
This is so terrifying.
I know. He mentions again later in another hypnosis sessions, quote unquote, they're just there, these eyes, they're just up close to me, pressing against my eyes. So, scary shit.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I think you already mentioned, but I can't remember. Is the aliens, they're speaking telepathically as well, or do they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now they mention both of them say that. So what is it? Betty says that they speak to her in English and she can understand them. Barney says that they speak a mumbling language, but then, when they're talking amongst themselves, but then when they talk to him, they speak in English and he can understand them. Both of them said that when they speak, they don't move their mouths.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, kind of, I don't know, kind of spooky if I was seeing that. I feel like, what the fuck? Anyway. He recalls that he was also put on an examination table, a metallic examination table. Some of his skin was also scraped. Someone looked into his ears and his mouth, and a thin tube was put into his butthole. So there's that. Classic anal probing, like probably why this was popularized to begin with. This is probably where a lot of this comes from. So that was interesting. Barney, during the hypnosis sessions, said that the aliens communicated to him through, quote unquote, thought transference. And the article says at that time he was unfamiliar with the word telepathy. So, he didn't even know what this was, and he was talking about it, which to me lends credence to what he's saying.
Okay, what happens next?
So, Betty Sessions, she also recalls the lost time. She says that they were abducted, like put into and her sessions like are similar to her dreams. So it's almost as if she didn't need the sessions to recall everything. Like her dreams had already reminded her of everything. Hypnosis sessions are similar. She recalls the incident. She says that some of the things, though, the article notes about the hypnosis session, though, were different from what she recounts in her dreams. Like the technology she talked about during the hypnosis sessions is different to the technology she described in her dreams. The short man had a quote unquote significantly different physical appearance from that of her dreams, but other than that, like, it was basically the same thing, which to me again lends credence. She talks about the star map during her sessions, and during her sessions he's actually able to draw the map, and this drawing became big, like a big part of the case, a big thing for skeptics to dig at. She could draw. She was able to draw a map during one of these sessions. She, at the beginning of her sessions, when she started claiming that this happened, she said that the aliens had told her that they came from the Zeta Reticuli system, which is a real constellation. And then months later, when she's having these sessions, she draws this map, and eventually it is analyzed like years later by some amateur astronomer, and the amateur astronomer concludes that it indeed is like the only thing she could have possibly drawn is this Zeta Reticuli system. And I don't know about you, but I doubt that this like middle-aged woman from New Hampshire knew a lot about astronomy.
Oh, especially if all she had access to was a small public library. Like,
exactly.
Oh, so, are you hearing the X-Files theme right now? Because I am.
That's her sessions are basically, to cut it short, they're her dreams, but with these added details and also this added drawing that she's able to replicate from her memory. So at this point, Barney's finally ready to accept that they had been abducted by these aliens, which is good. What's not good and kind of sad is that the guy that hypnotized them, I guess you could call him a psychologist, yes, he actually concluded that he was glad that these two people were no longer tormented by their anxiety, but he actually thought the most reasonable explanation was that they had imagined it, that it was a singular psychological aberration, quote unquote, which made me kind of sad. This isn't the same guy that said the thing about leaving as an interracial couple. That was someone else. The psychologist at least was nice about it, but he said, like, yeah, you guys imagined it.
Okay, but here's my problem with that, is that how can two people imagine the exact same thing?
They say that the hypnosis session, this is actually why I asked you when yours happened, because for this couple, the hypnosis sessions happened also 2 years after the thing, and critics say they could have had plenty of time to talk about the event and get their stories straight, so when they were quote-unquote hypnotized together, or sorry, separately, they could have the same story.
I don't know. I don't think that people are that dedicated to faking that, because you could literally ruin your life over saying something like this. Why would you willingly do that? And especially if they're already like an interracial couple in the 60s. Yeah,
it's also just the 60s in general. Like, people didn't believe in this shit.
Yeah.
I mean, still to this day. So, anyway.
So, is that the end of your story?
Pretty much. This couple never seek publicity, which is another detail that to me like lends credence, which is really interesting. And then later there again were refutations, a couple of which I mentioned. There was one refutation that posited that the couple had just seen a lot of alien TV shows or alien movies, basically. Not that there were a lot, but that was one of the refutations. So there was the one that they imagined it, the one that they straight up lied, or the one that they may have been subconsciously influenced by TV. I believe none of those. I think this was real.
I mean, I think this is definitely one of the better cases where you can argue that it was. Like, I think that there's a lot of good evidence, using that word sparingly.
Yeah, I think so.
I do want to talk about something though, because I've been taking notes the entire time, as promised, because I'm crazy. So I mean, obviously, we can conclude like the tingling sensation, the beep, they lost time and they felt like a higher state of consciousness, like, and then their watches, they stopped running, and the compass, all that stuff, like that's directly linked to electromagnetic fluctuations, right? So like I don't know, like, do you think that the aliens, like, okay, so they can speak telepathically, like, so maybe they can control us too, but they're using this advanced form of like electromagnetism that maybe in the future we're able to harness, or maybe if we're not the aliens in the future, whatever, they're just aliens. I don't know. I feel so excited by all this. What do you think?
I mean, so you're basically going back to the idea of like, what if this is us in the future? I
Right.
mean, yeah, I like that idea. I don't know how much I believe it, but I see it. I don't know. I think it's just as likely that this is just a different species, like a different civilization that started in a different place, that didn't at all start like humans. They're just their own thing, and they just happen to look like this. But for some reason, they love visiting us. Or it could very well be that these are future humans that are able to travel to the past in their spaceships. They come to present day Earth to do shit to us, because I don't know, they became infertile in the future, or we ran out of resources, so now we're taking everyone's sperm and putting shit up their ass. I don't know. I mean, that whole, like, that theme of abductees like being robbed of like sperm or eggs, that's very common.
Right.
And you wonder why. Like, it's not like they're trying to make human babies. They're not gonna take care of that. And I don't know about alien human hybrids, because why would they want that? So maybe they're just future humans. We became infertile in the future, all of us, for whatever reason, and maybe they're trying to like recreate themselves so they can still populate. Who knows? I mean, that's just super outlandish, but
Well, it would also explain, because it would explain why they don't hurt us or kill us. Like, it explains why there's not like mass invasions and why people aren't being killed, or like why they're being low key, because they don't want to kill us. Like, especially if you kill yourself in the past, I mean, maybe that'll affect the future, right? But also, like, if it is just aliens, not us in the future, then I don't know. Like, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
no, but that's very good what you said, because when have you ever heard of a story where someone says the alien tried to kill me?
Yeah.
That never happens. They just want to probe you. They want to watch you. They're basically nice-ish stalkers, but they don't try. They're not hostile. There are no chupacabras. There are no skinwalker. So, whoa, future episode ideas. write those down. But yeah, it doesn't happen. Which, it could mean, yeah, they're just future us.
Okay, big stoner thought though. Let's take it even further. What if they're in charge of us? What if we're like in their hamster cage and they're our owners and they're just like checking up on our health every once in a while?
Honestly, it could be that. I mean, we do that with our pets, right? We take them to the vet.
Mm-hmm.
They bring the vet to us.
Right, exactly. I don't know. There's so many options for this.
That's so like Men in Black. I don't know if you've seen Men in Black, but the ending of that, have you seen it?
Oh yeah, I have. The ending with the giant turtle.
Yeah, like, the very ending with the giant. No, I don't think it was like a giant turtle or giant octopus or something. It's like, I think it was a giant like octopus being that it was in this room full of marbles, and every marble was a universe basically. And I'm like, oh my god, so freaky. That's so
it's
trippy.
Possible. We don't know.
Yeah. I like that. I like that stoner thought.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, if I had to side with one of the, I guess you could call them theories, it would be that they're not us. I don't know. I don't buy it as much as I just buy the idea of this is a completely different and completely separate but very advanced civilization that has tried to make contact with us for a long time, or maybe already has made contact for thousands of years. That's another place we could go with this conversation, because a lot of people do say, oh, they've been here since the dinosaurs or whatever. But regardless, yeah, I think they're separate. I think that whenever it is they started 1,000 years ago or 50 years ago, or none, because some people believe that none of this is true and we still haven't made contact with any intelligent life outside of ourselves. You can call us that. Yeah, regardless of what the time frame is, I would think that they're separate and that they're just seeking to make contact the way we're seeking to make contact, but they've just been able to travel to us in a way in which we can't travel to anyone because we're not that technologically
I
advanced.
think the one thing I am sure about is that it would probably be they're traveling from another dimension, not space, but that doesn't indicate what they are, or why they're here.
Really? You think the dimension thing? Because usually when I think of it, I really think no, they just have super fast spacecrafts and they're coming from a different galaxy. But
I just don't buy it because space travel is so insanely difficult, and you're literally traveling through time when you travel through space, especially if you're going light years fast. So it doesn't seem very likely to me as the method, because you can travel instantly through dimensions. So if there was a way to do that, then why wouldn't you do that? That's easier,
I mean, yeah, through wormholes allegedly. Well, not even that. I think wormholes just allow you to travel through time. Basically, they're basically shortcuts. But no new dimensions are being talked about when you talk about wormholes. When you talk about black holes, when you talk about anything like that, dimensions don't come up. Which is why for me, dimensions, like the topic of dimensions, is far more outlandish, and I just rather believe that somehow they figured out how to travel at the speed of light, and that's how they did it. But I totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe we'll never know.
And maybe we'll never know. That's the real stinger here.
I mean, I don't even want to see a gynecologist, so I don't want anyone probing me on a spaceship. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm at.
I don't know. Maybe it'll be more of the of your Betty kind of thing. They'll just probe your nose.
Yeah, maybe let's go.
It'll be nice to you if you're down for the ride.
Well, they definitely didn't probe her because they knew that like her uterus was gone. So like they were like, I'm not gonna mess with that. Like her good parts are missing. So
you know what? I forgot about that. They totally would have probed her if she still had her uterus. You know it. Never mind. Yeah, I guess they just want to probe everyone. They just kind of
maybe this is just like Tinder for them. Like.
Oh my god. They don't play around. No. I don't know. One thought that I want to leave you with, one thought that I want to leave you and all of our listeners with before you guys go to bed tonight is, and I was talking to someone about this recently, not you, someone else. It was that if you believe that the things that you talk about, you put out into the universe, isn't this podcast basically like damning us?
Oh, I've been thinking about that too. I'm like, shit, we're gonna become for. Like, something is gonna latch onto us.
That's the thing. That's this just got really serious because, like, I actually make like the serious consideration in my head of, oh my god, should we continue?
I think we should. I poke the bear always.
I don't know, man. I kind of like playing it safe in a lot of things in life. But listen, the reason why I would still think this is safe is because, like I said, if you believe in that stuff, then that's the case. But I don't know how much I believe in that. I think that, I don't know. I am new agey, but not that much. I don't think that the law of attraction is that simple, where if you discuss something just for the sake of discussing it, like the exchange of ideas, that means you're attracting it. I think that if we were actively looking out to find something, maybe then we would attract it, like making circles and like this, like the floor, or like make circles in the ground with salt, or like, I don't know, like chanting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like then maybe we'd be crossing a line.
Well, also, like, I just want to like bring my skepticism in here. Like, we're not that popular right now, but on the off chance that it does get popular, I think it's far more likely that someone crazy will try and make us think we're abducted by aliens or something, and that would just be grounded in reality. I'm just saying, and then, like, obviously, like, me too, I don't really believe in a lot of this stuff. I think that's very helpful for me to talk about it with you, because then it's like, well, at least I get to talk about it, like it's like cathartic for me, and like, I don't know, it's helpful.
I don't know, I mean, look, to be completely honest, I mean, like, my logical being is like, no, Andre, talking about these things isn't going to attract them. I do think that some things that a person can do can attract some things to them, but and I don't know what those are, but I know I don't feel like I'm doing those things, whatever those things are. I don't feel like I'm crossing a real hard line on the sand. I really don't. Because we're really like researching something, talking about it, and basically laughing about it. So I just, and it's not like in a mocking way, but rather just you and I having fun, I really don't feel that that's gonna, I don't know, like make us magnets to anything. But
yeah, I think we're fine.
but my more irrational side almost sadistically likes thinking about it.
Right, because you want it to happen a little bit.
Well, that's the thing. I do, but I don't. Obviously, the part of me that wants to prove to myself and maybe to others possibly that all this stuff is real. All this stuff we talk about is real. Whether it be, fucking, I don't know, Bigfoot or demons or aliens or ghosts. Wants that to happen, but the other 90% of me, who's very much human and a normal person and gets scared by things, it's like, no, I would never want that to happen to me. None of this. Not even the most inane things like even seeing an alien from afar, because that would freak me out for life. Like, the human mind is a fragile thing. I mean, at least mine is. I'm seeing as I'm saying this. So it's like yes, but really no.
Yeah.
Because like after all the fun and games, if you really think about it, like I'm sure these people were like legitimately traumatized by a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and it probably didn't make their life any easier, Like who's gonna hire you at Taco Bell if you're the alien girl, I mean, honestly, that's not a big deal. Taco Bell's pretty chill. Live Moss.
if not, they'll Taco will hire you. Trust me, they'll hire anyone. The Taco don't come for us, or honestly, come for us. Sponsor us. I eat there every day. So to close that point, I am not. Listen, aliens. Listen, demons. Satan, if you're there. I honestly feel like I'm making
I feel like you're literally trying to contact the aliens right now, and you're just being like.
No, I'm not. I'm leaving them a voicemail, letting them know what's up. I do not want you at my house. Don't come. I'm having a retreat. No aliens. I'm having a retreat for the rest of my life. I'm taking no guests.
He is not down to clown.
I am not down to clown. Not down for contact. I'm good. So in case they needed to be, in case the way things work is you put them out into the universe. Well, I'm putting this out into the universe so everyone knows, every entity and spirit who wants to contact me before talking about it. If they do, you're not welcome.
You are not welcome at Andre's home. However, I will have cookies made for you. I will be waiting by the fireplace. I would give out my address, but then everyone would have it.
It's actually her address is beep beep beep.
Oh, good.
Oh my god, Shannon.
I think we went to a different place today.
Yes. Oh my god, we went to a different place.
We went to a different world. I don't know. This is so different from our last episode too. This is
which is totally fine. That's what it should be. Every episode should be an experience. This one didn't feel as scary, which is bad but good.
I don't know. I was freaked out a little bit. I think it ties into the belief thing. I don't believe in demons whatsoever, so I wasn't as scared. But with aliens, I'm like, oh shit, they're coming for my body. Like, that's happening.
That's interesting because I probably believe in aliens a lot more than I do in demons. But the other thing would scare me, it's probably because it's just much more somber and macabre. Even though I think this is more real, I think it's less, well, like we talked about, less harmful. So maybe that's why. Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I chose the Betty Andreasson thing, and I said aliens come at me. They're gonna love me, but they want to probe you, Andre. They know you're scared.
Oh my god! Quick, super quick story. I with a couple of friends went to a oh my god, what's an escape room recently.
Ooh.
And long story short, it was a scary escape room. It was like an escape from the murderer's escape room.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
You have 1 hour to find the clues. The room ends up being 3 fucking different rooms. 2 of them are secret, of course, and you're like, oh my god, no more rooms. I want to get out. And at one point, if you ask for clues, like the murderer will give you clues. So he's kind of a shitty murderer because he's helping you escape. But if you ask for clues, they'll give you clues. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that there's a PA system so they can talk to you while you're in the room. And I just thought it was so fucked up because it was me and and 3 other friends, and I was the one that was the most scared. I was a big pussy, basically. And I was like hiding behind some of them. I don't know. And at one point, there's a clue. Like, in order to get one of the clues, at one point you have to lie down on this dirty bed where, like, supposedly someone was killed. You know, they put the props all around you, and it's really spooky, and the lighting is really bad. So, like, there's almost no light. You're really scared. I was actually kind of genuinely
This
scared.
is like my dream you're describing. Like, I want this.
They are. So at one point, one of the clues requires you to do that. I tell one of my friends, do it. I guess the girl is playing the murderer, but she has like a voice changing device. She hears me say this over the PA because I think they're watching the game as we're playing it. And she's like, no, I want Andre.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, fuck you, because I have to get on this bed, and for all I know, the bed is also a prop, and it like turns over and I end up in some basement. I was just freaked.
That's pretty elaborate. I really hope that is what it was.
No, I don't think it was that fancy of an escape room, but oh my God, at that moment I did not put it past it. I was freaking out. Turns out, no, that's it. I just needed to lay on the bed and say like, I love you, murderer, or something. I don't even remember. Something stupid. And then like a little door opened with her clue. And I was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to die.
Wow.
So
this is like totally Jigsaw and Saw.
I know. That's pretty much what I felt like. So you were saying like, like the aliens went after you. I just felt, I don't know, it just reminded me of that. It was so freaky. Because when you wanted, when you wanted the least, they come for you the most.
Yeah. I will say I don't want any humans to murder me, so when I said that was my dream, please don't murder me. I don't like that. Yeah.
You and I should go to an escape room sometime.
We really should.
That would be fun.
Except
Shannon?
I don't know.
What, freak out?
No, I think I would probably help the murderer freak you out.
Fuck you.
You're just an easy mark.
I actually get scared by these things, which, I mean, look at me having a podcast about scary things and getting scared by scary things.
I mean, just
it's a hard life to live.
A random factoid here is that I actually was a zombie in a maze for Halloween one month, like throughout October. Yeah, I scared people, and one man, a 30-year-old man, slapped me in the face. He was so scared. And you're not supposed to touch the actors, but I didn't rat him out. I was a trooper. It's fine.
Oh my God. That's crazy. I mean, that means you were good.
Oh yeah, I got them. I was hiding the cornrows so intensely, and I knew when to get them.
This was fun.
This was fun. All right.
I do not know what we're gonna do next episode, but
I mean, I already have some ideas.
Okay, well, you shoot those my way, but we really we really upped the stakes with this one. This was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I like both of the topics a lot. So
yeah.
Man, your story was.
I mean, I felt the passion. I think we were both pretty passionate. Yes. We're both very intrigued, and I think that's great. And I hope our two listeners really enjoyed it too.
Yeah, we have upgraded from 1 to 2. Hopefully next week it'll be 3. I don't know, maybe 4.
Tell
maybe
it will
grow exponentially instead of just. Yeah, exactly. So to the people that are listening to us, the 2 people, please tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad. Scary Talk is on and it's going, and it's going to be in episode 3 next week, whether you like it or not. You probably don't, but it's going to be there for you to listen to it. Shannon and I will be back. For now, we are going to go have a spooky night. Shannon, any closing thoughts?
I need to go to Winco. That's not going to be that spooky, but they are open 24 hours. So
have you seen the people at Winco?
I am the people of Winco. What are you talking about?
Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Ta-ta. Bye.
Bye.